When I arrived at my family's century-old ranch at dawn, my heart sank at the sight of HOA Karen. Her floral blouse stretched taut across her midsection, flanked by 2 uniformed enforcement officers, pelting my newly laid irrigation pipes with objections and citing an obscure bylaw about unauthorized utility work. My chest tightened as she pointed at the mechanism controlling the main water valve and declared, "These repairs violate Section 9(b) of the Riverbend Estates HOA covenants until you pay $5,000 in fines and permit fees. I'm shutting off your water." I watched in disbelief as my ranch hands, their sleeves rolled up, stood frozen beside me, drills in hand. The shock of entitlement colliding with our heritage stung sharper than the cold morning breeze. This wasn't just a fence or a mailbox, it was the lifeblood of our property. Water that sustained livestock, orchards, and our very way of life. As Karen turned her rancorous gaze on me, I realized that appeasement was no option. I would have to fight fire in this case, water with a counterstrike of equal force and principle. I stepped forward calmly, lifting my voice above her hysterics. "Show me your legal authority to seize the main water valve," I demanded. Karen's enforcers rattled their clipboards, but neither produced a court order. I signaled to my ranch foreman, who activated our backup system, a discreet, well-connected auxiliary valve routed through a private pump. Within moments, water flooded through the pipes upstream and rippled under the HOA checkpoint, restoring flow to every meter except the line feeding Karen's mansion and 40 downstream homes. The twist was both poetic and painful. While neighbors cheered at the return of life-giving water, Karen and her enforcers gawked in horror as their own faucets remained dry. That single action, reclaiming our ranch's autonomy and exposing the HOA's hollow threats, ignited the controversy that would define our community's future. Word of the water restoration spread like wildfire through Riverbend Estates. Homeowners whose lawns had wilted overnight emerged onto their porches and realized their taps ran clear again. They shared confused glances as Karen's house alone remained waterless, her wrath echoing down the empty pipeline. I seized the moment to share photographic proof of Karen's blockade on the neighborhood forum, documenting her lack of legal paperwork and my subsequent, lawful reactivation of the valve. Comments exploded with outrage at her petty tyranny and praise for my decisive response. But I knew public opinion alone wouldn't prevent a legal showdown. I needed an unexpected alamy cousin, Deputy District Attorney Sarah Morgan, who had a reputation for prosecuting public corruption. I phoned her, voice steady despite my adrenaline, and laid out Karen's extortionate demands and illegal interference with essential services. She promised immediate review. When the office of the district attorney opened the case, it introduced the second twist. Karen's misuse of HOA power wasn't just a local grudge, it qualified as criminal coercion and deprivation of essential needs for political gain. That afternoon, I confronted Karen at her immaculately trimmed lawn, newspaper clutched under my arm bearing the DA's press release. Riverbend Estates HOA president under investigation for coercive abuse of authority. Her bloated face paled beneath a pink hue as neighbors gathered on sidewalks, smartphones raised. She sputtered about due process, but her words fell flat against the mounting authority of law and crowd solidarity. I felt a rush of righteous satisfaction as I observed her son hurriedly trying to turn off live streaming. That confrontation, public, undeniable, and laden with legal weight, was the dramatic apex where entitlement met accountability. Within days, the DA's office obtained an injunction barring Karen from HOA enforcement activities and ordered immediate resumption of water to her property and all affected homes. Riverbend's board, shamed by public scrutiny and legal pressure, convened an emergency vote to suspend Karen indefinitely and establish an independent oversight committee. I joined neighbors at a hastily organized town hall where we drafted new covenants. No unilateral utility shutdowns, mandatory legal review of enforcement actions, and a hotline to report abuses. Witnesses testified about Karen's financial motives, pocketing fines and fees, and her board mates, once silent, now spoke of her unchecked power. Each statement hammered another nail into the coffin of her presidency. At dusk, under strings of lanterns in the ranch's orchard, neighbors gathered for a solidarity cookout. Children ran through sprinkler sprays as adults passed plates of grilled vegetables and fresh lemonade. I stood before the crowd, voice full of emotion, and recounted the 5 stages of our journey. The shocking fence line blockade, the truth of our auxiliary valve, the dramatic confrontation, Karen's swift legal collapse, and now our communal renaissance. I raised my glass in a toast to resilience, unity, and the rule of law, then offered a final thought etched into the wooden board at the orchard's entrance. Did cutting water to the few restore justice for the many, or did it cross a line? Share your verdict on right and wrong below. Beneath the moonlit boughs, our story found its inspiration in the power of standing together against entitlement. Morning broke over Riverbend Estates with the sound of dripping faucets and sighs of relief. Homeowners poured onto lawns, testing their showers and sprinklers. The mayor's office had dispatched utility inspectors to oversee the restoration, ensuring Karen's house and the 40 downstream properties received uninterrupted flow. I stood beside Deputy DA Sarah Morgan as she received the official report, her satisfaction clear. The authorities had launched a full inquiry into Karen's extortion and interference with essential services charges that, if proven, carried severe penalties. In the ensuing days, the Independent Oversight Committee held open forums to rewrite the HOA's enforcement framework. Residents crowded the community center, offering input on draft provisions. All enforcement actions now required a 2-week notice, proof of legal authority, and a 75% supermajority board vote. The committee also introduced an annual audit of fines collected, with mandatory publication of receipts and expenditures transparency to prevent any further funneling of fees into Karen's personal accounts. One emotionally resonant twist emerged when Karen's own gardener, a gentle man named Miguel, came forward. He'd worked for Karen for years and witnessed her growing obsession with control. Miguel testified that Karen had used HOA fines to buy extravagant plants and stone statues for her mansion, neglecting the communal green she was elected to protect. His heartfelt statement laced with Spanish-accented sorrow reminded everyone that abuse of power often begins with small selfish acts and ends in collective harm. The courtroom-like hearing room fell silent as he described how Karen's edicts first chipped away at neighborly trust and then targeted her own employees for loyalty. Miguel's testimony added a deeper human dimension. Even perpetrators' closest allies can be victims of entitlement's corrosive reach. Meanwhile, the DA's office filed formal charges against Karen for criminal extortion, deprivation of essential services, and misappropriation of HOA funds. A judge set bail conditions prohibiting her from entering the estates, pending trial. In solidarity, the HOA board formally rescinded every action taken by Karen during her tenure: fines, evictions, curfews, issuing apologies and restitution checks to affected residents. The once feared president's name vanished from HOA letterheads, her bylaws shredded in a ceremonial bonfire at the committee's first renewal night. Neighbors gathered around the flames, tossing in scraps of her outdated decrees, celebrating the purifying power of justice and collective will. To ensure the community never forgot, we commissioned a sculptor to create a monument at the entrance of Riverbend Estates, 2 hands clasping a dripping faucet, symbolizing communal care and vigilance. The plaque read, "Water is life. Authority must serve, not subvert." During the unveiling ceremony, I delivered a brief address. May this monument remind us that essential resources are shared blessings, not bargaining chips for the entitled. We stand guard together, ensuring no one wields power against our collective rights. Applause echoed as children splashed in nearby fountains, symbolizing renewal. In the months that followed, my ranch repairs continued unimpeded, new irrigation lines nourishing meadows and fields. The powerful auxiliary valve remained in place, its registration filed with the county as a lawful defense mechanism. Periodic HOA newsletters featured updates on the ongoing trial, civic workshops on neighborly dispute resolution, and profiles of residents like Miguel, whose courage bridged divides. Winter arrived, and with it came the first annual Riverbend Resilience Festival. Stalls lined the ranch's front pasture. A chili cook-off hosted by local chefs, crafts by neighboring artisans, and a stage for storytelling. Our monument stood in the center, halos of light illuminating it against the night sky. I joined Deputy DA Morgan on stage for a panel discussion on civic responsibility, where she praised how the community had balanced firm resolve with compassion, ensuring that even Karen, when her trial concluded, would have a chance at rehabilitation. On trial day, Judge Alistair presided over the packed courtroom. He listened intently as the DA presented evidence. HOA logs, Miguel's testimony, and video footage of Karen ordering the water shut off. Karen's defense, arguing a misinterpretation of bylaw language, crumbled under cross-examination. When the judge announced his verdict guilty on all counts, gasps and applause reverberated, tempered by the sober understanding that justice is a grave process. Karen received a sentence including restitution, community service, probation, and mandatory counseling on ethical leadership, but no prison time, reflecting our community's hope for her reform rather than mere punishment. Spring returned, and with it, new beginnings. The Oversight Committee circulated a booklet, Guardians of the Flow, detailing our statutes on utilities and dispute resolution. City planners invited me to speak at a regional conference on public services governance, citing Riverbend's response as a blueprint. The National HOA magazine featured a full spread on our saga, headlined, "When the Valve Turned, a Community Reclaimed Its Rights." In the quiet moments, I reflected on the arc of entitlement and accountability, from Karen's initial trespass to our creative defense and ultimate reforms. The farm's fields thrived under the repaired irrigation, and families built new memories around kitchens that never went dry. Above the horizon, a banner plane towed the inscription, "Unity over Entitlement," a fitting coda for a story that began with blocked repairs and ended in collective empowerment. Finally, I penned my closing post on Entitled People Reddit. From shut-off orders to shared fountains, how blocking water led to justice, reform, and community rebirth. Do you believe cutting off an HOA tyrant's H2O was just retribution or an overreach of vigilantism? Share your verdict on right and wrong below. As I clicked post, the murmur of spring breezes through budding orchards whispered that true power lies not in drought, but in the shared wellspring of solidarity and law.